You bet $2. The reels stop, and the machine erupts. Lights, sound, animation. A number starts climbing across the screen. Your brain instantly says, I won. But you didn't. You received 60 cents. That spin cost you $1.40. The machine just celebrated taking your money. And here's the disturbing part. Your brain reacted almost the same way it would have if you'd actually won. The lights are flashing. The music is swelling. Dopamine is firing. And you just lost money. I know this because I helped design it. The gambling industry has a name for this trick. Loss disguised as a win. It's exactly what it sounds like. A financial loss package to feel like a victory. And it's not an accident. It's not a glitch. It's not a harmless design choice. It's one of the most effective psychological tools ever built into a slot machine. And once you understand how it works, you'll never hear a slot machine the same way again. I want to tell you about the day I understood what we had actually built. It was sometime in the mid-1990s. I had been in the slot machine industry for about 15 years at that point. Long enough to know the math cold, long enough to have been in more design meetings than I could count, long enough to have stopped thinking of the machines as anything other than engineering problems to be solved. And we were watching focus group footage, a room of players seated at machines playing, and we were watching their faces. There was one woman, middle-aged, pleasant-looking. She'd been playing for about 40 minutes, and she hit a spin. The machine went absolutely alive. Lights cascading, music swelling. That celebratory jingle weed refined over months of acoustic testing, firing on all cylinders. She smiled. Her shoulders came up. She made a sound of delight and reached over to tap the arm of the woman next to her. She had clearly just won something. She had not won anything. On that particular spin, she had bet $2 across 20 lines. The machine returned 60 cents. She had just lost $1.40, and she was celebrating. The room of engineers and designers around me watching that footage said nothing for a moment. And then someone, I won't say who, said very quietly, "It's working exactly as designed." And he was right. It was. That moment has stayed with me for 30 years. Not because it was unusual, because it wasn't. Because we watch variations of that moment thousands of times across hundreds of focus groups and player observation sessions. And every time, the response in the room was the same. Satisfaction, professional pride. It's working. I'm going to tell you exactly what was working, how we built it, why we built it, and what it does to your brain every single time you sit down in front of one of those machines without knowing it's happening. The thing you need to understand first has a name inside the industry. We called it LDW, loss disguised as a win. It sounds clinical when you say it like that. Clean, technical. It sounds like a category in a spreadsheet. That's deliberate, by the way. The language you use internally for something shapes how you think about it. And loss disguised as a win sounds a lot more manageable than what it actually is, which is a machine tricking your nervous system into celebrating a financial loss. Here's how it works. Modern slot machines don't have one pay line. The old mechanical machines, the ones with the single line across the middle, those had one pay line. You either landed on it or you didn't. Simple, clean. The outcome was unambiguous. Modern machines have anywhere from 5 to 100 pay lines or more, running in every direction across the screen. Horizontal, diagonal, zigzag, patterns you'd need a diagram to follow. And when you spin, you can win on some of those lines and lose on others simultaneously. The machine adds up all the line results and gives you a net number. Here's the trap. If you bet 10 cents per line across 20 lines, your total bet is $2. That's what's at stake on every spin. Now imagine that spin returns 4 lines winning. The machine detects 4 winning combinations for separate positive events, and it celebrates all 4 of them. Lights for the first one, sound for the second, animation for the third, the ticker counting up your winnings for the fourth. But those 4 winning lines returned a combined total of 80 cents. You just lost $1.20, and the machine just threw a celebration that your nervous system cannot distinguish from an actual win. That is LDW. That is what loss disguised as a win means in practice. Not an edge case, not a rare glitch in the system. A designed, tested, deliberately implemented feature of virtually every multi-line slot machine on the floor of every casino operating today. And this is where it gets into neuroscience. Because I want you to understand this isn't just about confusion. This is about something that happens in your brain before your rational mind has a chance to weigh in. When we were developing the celebration sequences in the 1990s, we worked closely with behavioral psychologists and acoustic consultants whose entire expertise was the science of reward response. Not gambling reward response specifically, human reward response. The neurological machinery that every person carries that evolved over hundreds of thousands of years to make us feel good when something good happens. That machinery runs faster than conscious thought. When you see a certain combination of light and movement and hear a certain combination of pitch and rhythm, the response in your brain happens before you've processed the information. The dopamine releases. The pleasure signals fire. Your body responds to winning before your mind has confirmed whether you actually won. We knew this. We had the research in front of us. We designed to it. The specific frequencies we used in winning sounds were chosen because they triggered stronger reward responses than other frequencies. The visual flash patterns were tested against control groups to identify which ones produced the most excitement. The timing of the audio cue relative to the visual cue was calibrated down to milliseconds because we found that a specific offset between sound and light produced a stronger response than either stimulus alone. This was not casual. This was the application of serious scientific knowledge toward a very specific and very profitable goal, making your brain feel like it won, even when it didn't. Now here's the part that I think is most important to understand about why LDW is so effective, and this is something most people never think about. The rational part of your brain, the part that does math, the part that could in theory track your total bet versus your total return and recognize a net loss, that part is slow. It requires conscious effort. It works sequentially. It needs information, processing time, and attention. Your reward circuitry is none of those things. Your reward circuitry is fast, is parallel. It does not require attention. It runs on pattern recognition so deep and so hardwired that you cannot turn it off by deciding to. When a celebration happens, the reward response fires. Every time, in every person, regardless of what they know intellectually about how the machine works. I know how those machines work better than almost anyone alive. I built them. I understand every mechanism. And I can tell you with complete honesty that if I sat down at one of those machines today and hit a loss disguised as a win, my brain would respond before I could stop it. The feeling would happen. A fraction of a second later, my conscious mind would recognize it and reframe it. But the feeling would happen first. That fraction of a second is everything. That is the space the machine lives in. That is what we were engineering for. But none of that, not the multi-line mechanics, not the reward circuitry, not the calibrated sound design, none of it is the part of this story that makes me most uncomfortable to tell. That would be what we call the stacking effect. And it is the part of slot machine psychology that I think about most now that I have nothing left to protect by staying quiet. Here is what stacking means. LDW does not work alone. Loss disguised as a win is one instrument in an orchestra that is playing simultaneously, continuously, every second you're seated at that machine. And the instruments reinforce each other in ways that are far more powerful than any one of them operating in isolation. There is the near miss, which I have talked about before, that moment when the jackpot symbol stops one position above the pay line and your brain responds almost identically to how it responds to an actual win. Near misses are programmed. They are in the probability table on purpose. They're the keeps, the small genuine payouts, maybe 20% of your bet returned, that give you just enough positive reinforcement to sustain the behavior without giving you enough actual value to walk away satisfied. These are not accidents either. They're the minimum viable reward, calibrated to the point just above where most players will stop and below the point where the return becomes unacceptable to the operator. There's the speed of the game itself. A modern slot machine can complete a full spin cycle in 3 seconds or less. That is 20 spins per minute, 1,200 spins per hour. At $2 a spin, you don't need a calculator to see where that goes. And the speed is not accidental either. It was optimized. Faster is almost always more profitable. The only limit is the speed at which you can keep the player from consciously registering what is happening. And then there is LDW layered on top of all of it. So that even in the spins where the keeps don't fire, where the near miss doesn't appear, where nothing programmed to feel positive has happened, the multi-line structure still generates celebration events, still gives the reward circuitry something to fire on, still keeps the experience feeling like it contains positive moments even when the math of the session is entirely, uniformly negative. These systems together create something that is more than the sum of their parts. They create a subjective experience that feels, from the inside, like a game with wins and losses, with ups and downs, with genuine uncertainty and genuine outcomes. What they actually create is a continuous delivery mechanism for partial reinforcement, which behavioral psychology has known since the 1950s is the most powerful and most resistant to extinction form of conditioning that exists. Partial reinforcement, not consistent reward, not consistent punishment, unpredictable, intermittent, variable reward delivered in a context where the behavior required to receive it is simple and repeatable. That is the structure of slot machine play. That is what all of these systems are designed to produce. And it is not a coincidence that is also the structure that produces the strongest and most durable learned behaviors in every animal study ever conducted on the subject. I sat in meetings where we discussed these studies, where the language was clinical and professional, and we talked about engagement metrics and session duration and return visit rates. And what we were talking about, stripped of the clinical language, was how to make the machine work on people the way those studies worked on pigeons. I'm not proud of that. I want to say something now that I have never said inside an industry context. Because inside an industry context, there was always a reason not to. Always a framing available that made what we were doing sound reasonable. Players choose to be there. Nobody forces them. The information is available to anyone who looks for it. We're in the entertainment business. I used all of those framings for years. They get harder to sustain. Because here's what I actually watched. I watched people who came in for an hour stay for 6. Not because they were having 6 hours of fun. Because a machine had produced a neurological state in which leaving felt wrong. In which the interrupted behavior, the unresolved partial reinforcement loop, created an actual physiological pull to continue. The same pull that keeps a person clicking the refresh button, waiting for a message that may or may not come. The same mechanism, applied to a machine that charges $2 every 3 seconds for the privilege. And the LDW was part of that. Was maybe the most elegant part of that, because it meant that even in a long losing session, even in a session where no genuine positive outcome had occurred for an extended period, the machine was still generating celebration events, still telling the nervous system that something good was happening, still providing the intermittent reinforcement that the behavioral conditioning required to keep the loop running. The player's rational mind knew they were losing. The session totals were there on screen. Anyone who looked could see, but the nervous system was still getting its signals. The celebration still fired. The dopamine still moved. And in the conflict between what the rational mind knows and what the nervous system feels in a tired person, in a person who has been sitting in that engineered environment for hours, in a person whose rational resources have been slowly depleted by exactly the kind of sustained decision-making fatigue the casino environment is designed to produce, the nervous system wins more often than not. That is not a design flaw. That is a design goal. So what do you actually do with this? Because I am not in the business of making people afraid. That was not why I decided to say these things. I spent a long time deciding whether to say them at all. And the reason I did is not to produce helplessness. It is to produce the one thing that actually changes the dynamic between you and those machines. Awareness. Specifically named concrete awareness of the mechanism. Not a general sense that the casino is trying to get your money. Everyone knows that. I mean the specific knowledge that the celebration you feel, the positive response in your body when those lights flash and that music plays, that response may be entirely disconnected from a positive financial outcome. that your nervous system has been successfully triggered and your rational mind has a job to do in that moment that it will not do automatically. The job is to look at the number, not the experience of the spin. The number. What did I bet? What did I receive? Is that number higher or lower than what I put in? That check takes 2 seconds. And the reason most players don't do it is not laziness. It is because the machine is specifically designed to make it feel unnecessary. The celebration says something good happened. Your nervous system agrees. The conscious verification feels redundant. It is not redundant. It is the only corrective available to you in real time. Here is the other thing I would tell you. And this one is less about the mechanics and more about the moment. The celebration is loudest when the math is worst. That is not always true, but it is true often enough to be a signal worth paying attention to. Multi-line machines with many active lines are the highest generators of LDW events. They are also, frequently, the lowest performing machines in terms of actual return relative to theoretical RTP. The complexity of the line structure, the frequency of the celebration events, the sophistication of the audio-visual reward response. Those things cost engineering hours, and they cost something on the payout side too. A machine that is working hardest to make you feel like you're winning is often the machine on which you are winning the least. Sit with that for a moment. Walk the floor next time with that in mind. Listen to which machines are loudest. Watch which ones have the most elaborate celebration sequences for the most frequent events. Those machines are performing. And what they're performing for is you, and for the people around you, and for the people walking past who hear the sound and feel the pull of it before they've made a conscious decision to approach. The show is the product. The experience of almost winning, of constantly receiving positive signals in a session that is financially negative, that experience is what those machines are selling. And they sell it with a level of craft and intention and scientific precision that most people who sit in front of them never imagine. I imagined it. I built it. I spent 37 years making it better. And I will tell you the same thing I always come back to when I think about what actually matters at the end of all of this. There's only one place where your awareness of all this engineering can actually function as a defense. Before you sit down, once you are in the seat, once the machine has started and the celebration has fired a few times and the environment is doing what it was built to do, your rational resources are already under pressure. Not gone, not useless, but compromised in the specific ways that the specific environment was designed to compromise them. Before you sit down, you're still fully yourself. You have all your reasoning available. The lights have not started yet. The sounds have not started yet. The dopamine loop has not opened. That is the moment to make the decisions that will govern the entire session. Your number, what you are genuinely willing for this to cost tonight. Real number, not a starting point, a ceiling. And the decision made now, while you are yourself, that when the machine celebrates and your body responds, and every signal you're getting says something good just happened, you will look at the actual number on the screen and verify whether that is true before you let the feeling stand unchallenged. You cannot turn off the response. I'm not asking you to. Neither could I, and I built the thing. What you can do is put one conscious step between the feeling and the next bet. One check, 2 seconds. What did I bet? What did I receive? That is not a system. It is not a guarantee. It will not protect you from every mechanism we built into those machines. But it is the one move that the machine cannot counter, because the machine has no mechanism that touches the moment before you bet. It can only work on you while you're playing. That gap between sessions, between the door of the casino and the chair, between the decision to gamble and the first spin, that gap is yours. The machine has no access to it. It cannot celebrate in that gap. It cannot near miss you. It cannot stack LDW events in the space where you are standing outside, deciding what tonight means and what it is allowed to cost. That is where you are still entirely yourself. Go in knowing what you know now. Look at the number, not the lights. Hear the celebration for what it is. And hold your number like the only thing in that building that was built specifically for you, because it is. Everything else in there was built for the house.